Order. I welcome our witnesses and their families. And I thank them for being here this morning. We face a threat environment more dangerous than any since World War II. And we face it together. And the members of this panel will be very much involved in answering that call, and I do appreciate them standing forward and doing that. Mr. Timothy Dill has been nominated to serve as Assistant Secretary of Defense for Manpower and Reserve Affairs. If confirmed, he will oversee nearly all of the department's policies affecting careers and quality of life for our military and civilian workforce. He would play a key role in ensuring the department fosters a culture rooted in merit, a culture that recognizes excellence, supports families, and remains competitive with the civilian sector. President Trump and Secretary Hegseth have refocused the Pentagon on readiness and warfighting, eliminating policies such as DEI above merit and performance. I look forward to hearing Mr. Dill's vision for strengthening the ways the department manages military and civilian personnel, rewards top performers, and sustains the positive momentum our administration has generated in recruitment. Mr. Maurice Todd has been nominated to serve as Assistant Secretary of Defense for Readiness. The department faces significant hurdles, including maintenance backlogs on our aircraft and naval fleet, supply chain disruptions, and a lack of flying hours. If confirmed, Mr. Todd must accelerate reforms in his office. These reforms should help build better tools for senior leaders, equipping them to fix readiness challenges. Then they must ensure that readiness is measured and reported to Congress in a way that is transparent and fosters accountability. Today, we hope to hear Mr. Todd's perspectives on how we can improve joint force readiness, leverage emerging technologies, and predict readiness gaps, and ensure that our industrial base can sustain operations in a protracted conflict. Mr. Michael Payne has been nominated to serve as Director of Cost Assessment and Program Evaluation, or CAPE. If confirmed, he would be responsible for the critical work of providing independent cost analysis for the department's acquisition programs. However, he would be also inheriting a fractured relationship with Congress. And we need to talk about that today. Congress previously considered actually fully de-establishing CAPE. Instead, Section 902 of the fiscal year 2024 National Defense Authorization Act was passed into law to reform the office. Unfortunately, there has been limited reform to date. Now the House Defense Appropriators have contributed their voice to the mix, adding a provision to shrink CAPE, a provision which I support. The Congressional Defense Committees routinely ask the department to justify massive decisions about DoD weapons programs. In response, we often hear that CAPE analyses and advocacy played a determinative role in these decisions and resulting setbacks. We need a strong, centralized civilian analytic group to support the Secretary and the Deputy Secretary. But that group needs to be honest about its biases, willing to revisit assumptions, and mindful of the fact that simple modeling analysis cannot possibly capture the complexity of the decisions the Pentagon must face. And that's not what we have right now. And finally, Mr. Velez Green has been nominated for the position of Deputy Undersecretary of Defense for Policy. If confirmed, he would serve as the principal advisor to the Undersecretary of Defense for Policy. He would have the full power and authority to execute the duties of Undersecretary Colby and would be heavily involved in managing the policy enterprise, including its relationship with other executive branch actors. Sound judgment is the principal attribute required of the individual serving in this position. He must also bring deep experience in defense policy and in managing large organizations. Mr. Velez-Green no doubt watched the committee's hearing on Tuesday. He saw that many of this committee have serious concerns about the Pentagon's policy office and how it is serving the President of the United States and the Congress. On Tuesday, several members reviewed a number of actions taken by the Pentagon's policy office. We discussed Ukraine security assistance, forced posture moves, AUKUS, Japan policy, the National Defense Strategy and where it stands, and more. I want to be clear from the outset of this hearing, we asked these questions based on extensive discussion with other administration personnel and with U.S. allies. We do not simply rely on articles from the press. No one at this dais takes everything the press says as gospel truth. Certainly, the president has been treated terribly by the media since he walked down that escalator. But to put it simply, I do not believe members are asking about any of this simply because we read it in the papers or hear it on the airwaves. Members of this committee are in regular contact with people inside the executive branch, both career civilians and political appointees. We talk to the Japanese, we talk to the Taiwanese, the Koreans, and the Baltic nations. In many of these conversations, we hear that the Pentagon Policy Office seems to be doing what it pleases without coordinating, even inside the U.S. executive branch. Some might hope to chalk up such accusations to faulty news reporting, but as I've said, it is not that simple. Either all of these other administration officials and senior foreign officials are deliberately misleading us, or we have a problem coming from this office at the Pentagon. That problem needs to be cleared up. One way to clean this up is for the policy shop to meet its statutory requirement to consult with this committee. It is a statutory requirement to consult with this committee rather than simply informing us of a decision after the fact. I say this at the outset because I think we're going to have more questions today. And as I said on Tuesday, I'm under no illusion that everyone involved in U.S. foreign policy agrees on everything. But we need a process that works for the president and the Article I branch of the government. Unfortunately, we do not have such a process at this moment. That makes it more difficult for the president and the Congress to align our national security against Xi Jinping and all the other junior partner dictators. During today's hearing, I hope to hear how Mr. Velez-Green would improve the policy office's performance so that it aligns more closely with the president on these consequential matters so that the office works and consults with Congress in a productive way. With that, I thank my colleagues for their attention, and I turn to my colleague, Ranking Member Reed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Good morning to our witnesses, and congratulations on your nominations. I'd also like to extend my best wishes to your family members and friends who are with you here today. Mr. Payne, you are nominated to be the Director of Course Assessment and Program Evaluation, CAPE. If confirmed, you will be responsible for providing independent analysis on all aspects of defense programs, including weapon systems and force structures, evaluation of program performance, and the cost effectiveness of defense systems. Your long career with CAPE and the Air Force should serve you well in this role. There are a number of challenges to address. In the near term, you must work with Congress to improve the quality and timeliness of acquisition data by establishing streamlined methods to reduce bureaucratic burdens while enabling congressional oversight. Longer term, CAPE must improve estimates for operation and sustainment costs and develop accurate methods for reporting the growing portion of the Pentagon's budget spent on contracted services. You will also need to balance rigorous cost estimates with the need for speed and tailored acquisition approaches. Mr. Payne, I would like to know how you plan to improve CAPE's transparency with Congress, and what are your views on CAPE's role in the new requirements and resourcing alignment board. Mr. Velez-Green, you are nominated to be Deputy Undersecretary of Defense for Policy, a critical position responsible for advising the Undersecretary and shaping defense policy and strategy at a consequential moment. The policies we set today will shape America's security for decades. China and Russia have made no secret of their aggressive ambitions, and we must focus our time, resources, and attention on competing effectively with them. You have argued that the United States must avoid distractions from wars of choice in low-priority theaters, and I agree. However, with that in mind, I would like to know how you and Undersecretary Colby reconcile this theory with the Department's ongoing military campaign and buildup in South and Central America. Is this not precisely the kind of strategic distraction you have both warned against? You have also written extensively in favor of steep reductions to America's role in Europe, the Middle East, and elsewhere. I would like to know why you support that approach, and if confirmed, how would you work to repair our standing with allies and restore our competitive position, particularly as we seek credibility in the Indo-Pacific? I'm concerned by reports that the forthcoming national defense strategy will make an alarming turn to heavily refocus the Department of Defense inward on American soil and homeland security. Mr. Velagreen, you have served in OSDP since day one, including 4 months as acting undersecretary. The committee expects clear answers on whether you believe the department's focus should be on homeland security missions or on long-term competition with China and Russia. Mr. Dill, you are nominated to be Assistant Secretary of Defense for Manpower and Reserve Affairs. This role is responsible for overseeing policies for military and civilian personnel, reserve component integration, and total force readiness, serving as a principal advisor to the Secretary of Defense on manpower and military community policy. Mr. Dill, I'm troubled by this administration's treatment of our military. President Trump and Secretary Hegseth have held campaign rallies on military bases, fired senior officers without cause, and threatened to deploy troops against domestic political opponents, among other divisive orders. These actions threaten the 250-year tradition of an apolitical military, a tradition that has made our armed forces the most trusted institution in America. If confirmed, you would be responsible for protecting and advocating for every single military service member and defense civilian, regardless of their personal political preferences or demographics. I would ask you to commit to this committee today that you understand the critical importance of maintaining an apolitical military and that you will defend this principle even if it's unwelcome by other leaders in the administration. Finally, Dr. Tart, you are nominated to be Assistant Secretary of Defense for Readiness. In this role, you would advise the Secretary on readiness and training, oversee policies ensuring the joint force is prepared for assigned missions, and maintain responsibility for the safety of more than 2.7 million uniformed and civilian personnel. There has been a troubling pattern of mishaps across the department this year. Just last week, 2 aircraft from the USS Nimitz crashed in the South China Sea within 1 hour of each other. The USS Truman has suffered repeated incidents at sea. Last month, an artillery exercise in California dropped shrapnel onto Highway 5, and several patrol vehicles were hit. And there have been multiple fatal helicopter crashes this year. While our service members perform dangerous work, peacetime accidents must be minimized. And I think you understand it very clearly. And I'd like to know what your plan is to restore a culture of safety across the force. Additionally, I'm concerned about readiness impacts from President Trump's domestic and border deployments. I'd ask for your plan to address lost training and readiness for missions unrelated to the goal of lethality of the military. Thank you again to our nominees. I look forward to your testimonies. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Ranking Member. Senator Cruz, our colleague, is here to introduce Mr. Dill. And, sir, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member, distinguished members of the committee. It is great to be back before the mighty Senate Armed Services Committee. I greatly enjoyed the 6 years I served with you on this committee, and I'm very glad to be back. Today, I have the great privilege of introducing my friend and former military legislative assistant and national security advisor, Tim Dill, as President Trump's nominee to serve as Assistant Secretary of War for Manpower and Reserve Affairs. Tim was born in Grand Prairie, Texas, and although he grew up in Ohio, being a Texan is a permanent condition. and we proudly claim him. Only a small percentage of young Americans volunteer to serve in the Army, and of those who do, only 2% earn the Green Beret, and Tim is part of that elite group. He served 10 years on active duty as an Army officer in the infantry and special forces, deploying in Afghanistan, Iraq, and multiple countries in Africa. During his service to our country, he earned the Combat Infantryman Badge, the Special Forces Tab, the Ranger Tab, the Pathfinder Badge, and the distinction of Jump Master. After his time defending our nation, he attended Duke University, where he earned both his JD and MBA and developed a terrible habit of rooting for Duke in basketball. Later, he joined my office as my military legislative assistant and national security advisor, where he served from December 2022 to January 2025. While on my staff, Tim worked tirelessly for a stronger military and a safer America. To ensure the lethality of our forces, he visited every active duty military installation in Texas and worked closely with service members and veterans to improve their care and treatment. Tim played a key role in numerous legislative initiatives, including the Americans Act, the Command Act, and the Medal Act, as well as leading authorization for additional funding for Joint Task Force North to counter transnational criminal organizations along our southern border. Beyond his distinguished service, remarkable sacrifice, and leadership in the Army, Tim is a man of great character. He is a warrior and a true patriot. He is a proud husband to Andrea and the father of two, who you have been hearing from this morning. From leading soldiers in combat to shaping legislation that strengthens our national defense and security, Tim understands the weight of responsibility that comes with leadership. I know he will work every day to ensure our military remains ready to fight and win, and I'll tell you, on top of that, he actually has a decent post game in basketball, which is a requirement for working in my office. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I cannot think of anyone more qualified, more prepared, more principled to lead this critical office in the Department of War. Tim served Texas service members and their families with dedication, and he will do the same for the 3 million American service members and their families. I strongly encourage you to support his nomination. Thank you.
Senator Cruz, thank you very much for your introduction and endorsement. It means a lot. I do understand that in some 12 minutes, you must gavel the Commerce Committee to order, a committee that I'm a member of. If you really, really need me, send for me, but I'll probably be in this room for the duration of
Go with God, my friend.
All right. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair,
Mr.
Chair, we were hoping for some questions for the senator.
Okay.
On the advice of counsel, I plead the fifth.
Thank you very much, Senator Cruz. And now, Mr. Dill, having been generously introduced, you're recognized for your opening statement, sir.
Chairman Wicker, Ranking Member Reed, and distinguished members of this committee, I'm honored to appear before you today as President Trump's nominee for Assistant Secretary of War for Manpower and Reserve Affairs. First and foremost, thank you to my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ for guiding my steps throughout my life. Thank you to President Trump for nominating me, and Secretary Hegseth and Undersecretary Tata for their confidence and support. Thank you to Senator Cruz for the opportunity to serve on his staff and for his kind introduction today. It was an honor to work on behalf of the people of Texas, and my time as a Senate staffer deepened my appreciation for the role that the Senate and specifically this committee plays in overseeing our armed forces. Behind me is my beautiful wife, Andrea, a constitutional law attorney who has so graciously supported my career, our daughter, Naomi, and our son, Claymore. I'm also joined by my father, Doug, and my mother, Annie, my sister, Bethany, my brother, David, and his wife, Alita. My sister, Emily, and her husband, Rob, could not be here today because Rob is stationed in Germany as a long-serving Department of the Army civilian. I'm also joined by my wife's parents, Scott and Christy Bethard, aunts and uncles Liz and Jerry August, and Herb and Patty McCracken, friends and fellow soldiers from various points of my Army career. Thank you to each of you, and a special thanks to my mother for so patiently homeschooling me for 11 years and to my father for modeling a lifetime of servant leadership. I grew up in Akron, Ohio, across the street from Sam McNeil, a World War II veteran who earned the Silver Star while serving in the 82nd Airborne Division. Both my grandfathers also served in World War II, William Knapp in the Army and Leslie Dill in the Navy. I was 16 when the World Trade Center towers fell, and like many of my generation, that defining event in our nation's history called me to military service, and I commissioned as a U.S. Army officer in 2007 through Army ROTC. I served 10 years on active duty, first in the footsteps of my neighbor Sam in the 82nd Airborne Division, and later as a Green Beret in 3rd Special Forces Group. I was honored to lead soldiers in Iraq, Afghanistan, and other countries in the Middle East and North Africa. My military service was transformational, giving me more than I could ever give back and deepening my love for my country. Serving alongside our nation's finest paratroopers and Green Berets challenged me to give my all and shaped my future steps. When I took off my uniform for the last time, the GI Bill covered my graduate degree at my dream school, which is where I met my wife, Andrea, giving me the best transition to civilian life that I could have asked for. I'm grateful to have a new opportunity to serve, and if confirmed, I'll strive for excellence in my role as a senior civilian leader in the department on behalf of 3 groups. First, my comrades in arms who gave their lives to preserve our freedom. I hope for my service to honor their memory and further the cause for which they fought. The second is the 3 million soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, Guardians, and department civilians who now have the watch, including many of the outstanding men and women with whom I was honored to serve. Third is the generation who will next carry the torch. That generation may include my own children, and I hope to ensure their opportunity to, like me, serve their country in a merit-based military that molds the next generation of leaders. Our military has long fielded an all-volunteer force, and the department must continue to inspire our finest young men and women to serve, both in uniform and as members of our critical civilian workforce. We must also persuade the best among them to stay and become senior leaders. To do those things, the department must continue to communicate the high calling of military service, the same call that led me to an Army ROTC recruiter 19 years ago. It must also provide them with desirable opportunities, relevant training, and a good quality of life, including for their families. The Assistant Secretary of War for Manpower and Reserve Affairs shoulders each of those responsibilities and more, and if confirmed, I will welcome that challenge. Thank you for considering my nomination, and I look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dill. And as an ROTC graduate myself, I very much appreciate you pointing that out. Mr. Payne, you are now recognized, sir.
Chairman Wicker, Ranking Member Reed, and distinguished members of the committee, I am honored to appear before you today as President Donald Trump's nominee to be the Director of Cost Assessment and Program Evaluation. First, I would like to express my gratitude to God for his many blessings. I also want to explicitly thank President Trump, Secretary Hegseth, and Deputy Secretary Feinberg for the confidence and trust they have placed in me to serve in this critical position. Finally, I want to acknowledge my family, including my wife, Melissa, my daughter, Ellen, and her fiancé, Josh, who are here with me today, and my son, John, and my mother and father, Karen and David Payne, who couldn't be here. Thank you all for your continued love and support. Growing up in a small village in upstate New York, I was surrounded by a family and community of people who love this country. I was greatly influenced by the stories of World War II veterans, like my great-uncle, Captain Jack Marshall, who served in the Army. My uncles Raymond and Carol Welker, my cousin Brian Welker, and my brother Steve also served in the Army. Their example instilled in me a strong sense of service and commitment to the security of the United States. Today, our great nation faces an urgent challenge. The rise of China, particularly their expanding military and deepening ties with Russia, Iran, and North Korea, is alarming and presents one of the most pressing challenges of our time. China continues to develop, test, and field advanced military capabilities at a rapid pace. Their progress and determination are unmistakable. We must meet this challenge with resolve. Strength remains our surest path to peace. Yet we must also confront the hard truth. For too long, our military has been asked to defend our nation with systems that are outdated, over budget, and delayed, while our adversaries modernize with purpose and speed. Under the leadership of President Trump and Secretary Hegseth, we will restore the military to unmatched strength and readiness. They set a clear vision and charted a path to protect the homeland with the Golden Dome for America initiative. They prioritized restoring America's maritime dominance by addressing our shipbuilding industry, and they have initiated efforts to shore up our nation's supply chain, including munitions production. These efforts and many others will ensure peace is preserved through unmistakable American power. If confirmed as the director of CAPE, I will support these efforts by focusing on 3 core priorities. First, during my time as a career civil servant in the Pentagon, I have worked both within CAPE and in the Air Force working with CAPE. I recognize that CAPE has often been viewed as operating beyond its mission responsibilities and has consequently been under heavy scrutiny. That is why, if confirmed, my first priority will be focusing CAPE on its defined mission of providing independent cost estimating and program evaluation analyses to the Secretary, Deputy, and other department leaders. Objective, fact-based analysis is the cornerstone of sound defense decision-making that puts the most advanced capabilities in the hands of our warfighters. Second, I will modernize CAPE processes and systems. We must leverage cutting-edge methods, tools, and digital systems to deliver faster, more accurate, and more relevant evaluations to keep pace with modern warfare and acquisition demands. Third, I will invest in the next generation of analysts and leaders. America's strategic advantage depends not only on technology, but also on people. Dedicated professionals who think critically, challenge assumptions, and embody integrity in service to the nation. CAPE has exceptionally talented men and women. If confirmed, I will do everything possible to enhance their professional development and uphold the independence and integrity that define their work. I believe strongly in the department's mission to deter conflict, defend our nation, and ensure every taxpayer dollar strengthens the security of the United States. If I am fortunate enough to be confirmed, I will work tirelessly to uphold these principles and provide the objective, rigorous analysis that national security demands. Thank you for your consideration. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Payne. Mr. Velez-Green, sir, you're recognized.
Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Reed, and distinguished members of the Armed Services Committee, it is an honor and a privilege to come before you today to be considered for the role of Deputy Under Secretary of War for Policy. I spent my formative years in government as National Security Advisor to a member of this committee, and it is with great respect, humility, and gratitude that I sit before you today. With respect to my nomination, I would like first to thank President Trump for his historic vision and leadership. I believe deeply in the President's determination to restore peace through strength, with a real desire for a durable peace on terms that leave Americans better off, but also recognition that we can only achieve that peace from a position of military strength. It is an extraordinary honor to be part of the President's administration, and I am deeply grateful for the President's confidence in nominating me for this role. I would also like to thank Secretary Hegseth for his support and for his clear-eyed, thoughtful, and courageous leadership. Under the Secretary's direction, the Department is rightfully returning to its roots as a warfighting organization, as the President has instructed. It has been a privilege to be part of the Secretary's team, and I am deeply grateful to be considered for this opportunity to continue to support his critical work at this critical time. To Undersecretary Colby as well, I owe my very deep gratitude. The Undersecretary is a brilliant thinker, strategist, and leader. He is also a good and decent man, mentor, and friend. It has been a true honor to support him for many years, and I am honored even more to be considered to serve as his deputy. Finally, I could not be here at all if not for the love and support of my wife, Megan, who is here with me today. Through countless long hours, late nights, and weekends spent at work away from her and our loved ones, she has stood behind me every step of the way, and I can never thank her enough for her support and the sacrifices that she has made so that I can serve my country. I would also like to sincerely thank my parents, my sister, and other family and friends, many of whom are here today, and to whom I am forever grateful. To my parents especially, to my mother, who was born to Puerto Rican migrants in an apartment in Hell's Kitchen, and went on to be a social worker and serve on our town's Board of Education, and to my father, who grew up in a Jewish family in the Bronx and went on to become a teacher. Anything I have accomplished or will ever accomplish, it will be because of the lessons that they taught me about being good to others, about hard work, determination, and overcoming adversity, and about the value of serving our fellow Americans. My family's story From humble beginnings in New York to this seat in our nation's capital, I've been all around this world, and that story is only possible right here in the United States. For them and for that, I'm incredibly grateful, and it is my sincere honor to be considered for this opportunity to give back, especially in a period of such historic consequence on the world stage. Members of this committee, if you will allow me, the role of Deputy Undersecretary of War for Policy is to support the Undersecretary of War for Policy as he informs and helps to advance the Secretary's priorities in line with President Trump's common sense, America First, peace through strength agenda. With respect to those priorities, Secretary Hegseth has been very clear. The Department is laser focused on defending the U.S. homeland, strengthening deterrence against China in the Indo-Pacific, increasing burden sharing with America's allies and partners, and supercharging our nation's defense industrial base. In my view, each of these efforts is critical in its own right, and together I believe they offer a path for the Department to deliver on President Trump's intent not only to defend our nation's homeland, but also to achieve and sustain peace around the world. They do so first by ensuring that the Joint Force is always ready and able to defend our nation's interests against the most consequential and difficult threats that we face. At the same time, these lines of efforts position the Department to work more closely with allies and partners around the world, building on the President's historic success at Hague and making these relationships stronger, more equitable, and more sustainable than they've been in decades, if not longer, which is good for the United States, of course, but also vitally important for allies and partners with whom we've worked together closely for many years, and I believe we should for many years to come. In closing, under President Trump's leadership, at the direction of Secretary Hegseth, I believe that we have an opportunity to restore peace through strength, not just in this hemisphere, but around the world, through a combination of focused, revitalized American military power and the fuller engagement of our allies and partners. And if I am fortunate enough to be confirmed for this role, you have my fullest and strongest possible commitment to dedicate myself to that effect. Thank you very much again for your time and your consideration. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Velez-Green. Dr. Todd, you are recognized.
Chairman Wicker, Ranking Member Reed, and distinguished members of the Senate Armed Services Committee. It is an honor and privilege to appear before you as the President's nominee for the Assistant Secretary of War for Readiness. I want to thank the President for this opportunity. I'm honored by the President's nomination and his trust. I am grateful for the time many of you have spent with me in recent weeks and thankful for the committee's attention to my nomination. I also thank Secretary Hegseth and Undersecretary Tata for their support. In contemplating the duties of the Assistant Secretary of War for Readiness would entail, should I be confirmed, I recalled President George Washington's words in his first annual address to Congress in 1790. To be prepared for war is the most effectual means of preserving peace. Now, more than 200 years later, these words continue to ring true, capturing President Trump's vision to achieve peace through strength. Further, as Secretary Hegseth and the Department work to restore the warrior ethos through a refocus on lethality, meritocracy, and accountability, if confirmed for this position, I will be laser focused on ensuring that the total force is ready to deter and, if called upon, to prevail against the most dangerous threats to American interests. To that end, if confirmed, I will dedicate my full attention to the following responsibilities. I will assess the readiness of the total force to execute the interim National Defense Strategic Guidance, inform Department strategic planning and resourcing, and support congressional reporting requirements. I will enhance readiness data analytics capabilities to provide the President and the Secretary with decision advantage critical to global operations. I will align military training and exercise investments with our national priorities to effectively build greater lethality and execute all-domain warfare. And I will protect our warfighters in readiness by promoting the highest safety and occupational health standards. Working collaboratively across the Department, a focus on these efforts will reinvigorate our warfighting capabilities and competitive advantages to ensure we can achieve strategic objectives across threats and time horizons. If confirmed, I look forward to bringing over 40 years of experience in international security affairs, focused on the defense of our country and the safety of the American people. As a former Army Field Artillery officer, Army aviator, foreign area officer, planner, intelligence officer, strategist, and veteran of the First Gulf War, to a wide range of senior civilian positions spanning all geographic combatant commands, I intimately understand the many dimensions of our nation's readiness, the importance of deterring our enemies, and the preparation required to prevail in conflict. I plan to bring this extensive experience, commitment, and passion to the role of Assistant Secretary of War for Readiness. Inspired by the honorable service of our service members and civilians, I apply my full devotion as a public servant of the American people. Thank you for your consideration. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, gentlemen. And I now ask you a series of standard questions this committee poses to all civilian nominees. You may answer simultaneously just with a yes or no. Have you adhered to applicable laws and relations governing conflicts of interest?
Yes.
Yes.
Have you assumed any duties or taken any actions that would appear to presume the outcome of the confirmation process?
No.
No.
Exercising our legislative and oversight responsibilities makes it important that this committee, its subcommittees, and other appropriate committees of Congress receive testimony, briefings, reports, records, and other information from the executive branch on a timely basis. Do you agree, if confirmed, to appear and testify before this committee when requested?
Yes.
Yes.
Do you agree to provide records, documents, and electronic communications in a timely manner when requested by this committee, its subcommittees, or other appropriate committees of Congress? And to consult with the requester regarding the basis for any good faith delay or denial in providing such records?
Yes.
Yes.
Will you ensure that your staff complies with deadlines established by this committee for the production of reports, records, and other information, including timely responding to hearing questions for the record?
Yes.
Yes.
Will you cooperate in providing witnesses and briefers in response to congressional requests?
Yes.
Yes.
Will those witnesses and briefers be protected from reprisal for their testimony or briefings?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Now we're going to begin a round of 5-minute questions. We'll perhaps take a second round, but as chair, I will try to hold members to the 5 minutes. First of all, a quick yes or no from each of you. Much of the funding in the Defense Reconciliation Bill is unspecific and will technically be at the discretion of the department because of our Senate rules, though we have provided written recommendations for them. Do you commit to follow the Congress's spending recommendations in defense reconciliation unequivocally, Mr. Dill?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Payne?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Velez-Green?
Yes, Mr.
And
Chairman.
Dr. Todd?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very, very much. Now, then let me start with Mr. Payne, and I thank you for your testimony, where you recognize that CAPE has often been viewed as operating beyond its mission responsibilities and has been under heavy scrutiny. I mentioned a proposal by the House Appropriations Committee, and that you intend to make a priority of focusing CAPE on its defined mission. So thank you for that, and I think it does acknowledge something that we all understand is out there. So 3 years ago, again, some people wanted to get rid of the CAPE office. This committee, working with our colleagues, decided against that, and we worked on a compromise. But it did involve some changes, and you're no doubt familiar with the law, Section 902 in the 2024 NDAA. It said that CAPE needs to do 3 things. First, it must create a working group on analytical methodology, and that was accomplished. Secondly, it must create an analytical cell separate from CAPE to pressure test our most important studies. Third, it must create an alternative analysis, procedures within CAPE to ensure they are thinking about immediate problems and not just long-term problems. Those second and third legal requirements have not been implemented, have they?
Senator, I really appreciate you raising this issue. It's an important one to you and the committee, certainly, and to me as well. In my 30 years of experience, both on active duty and as an
Well, we're going to be limited on time. They've not been implemented, have they?
Senator, as you mentioned, we have stood up the analysis working group, but we absolutely need to do more. Red teaming is an important part of any scientific or analytic endeavor, and if I'm confirmed, I will make it a priority to ensure that we comply fully, working with you, your staff, and the
Okay, well,
committee.
let me just point out, Mr. Payne, you've been deputy director since the law passed, and since January, you've been acting director, and yet the second and third directives of the statute passed by the Congress and signed into law by the commander-in-chief have not been implemented, and so that is a concern. Let me turn in the few seconds I have left to Mr. Velez Green. Yes or no? The policy office led the review of AUKUS, right?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, and that review is now correct, is now complete, is that correct?
Mr. Chairman, we're in the final stages in coordination with the Secretary.
Okay. When your colleague, Mr. Noe, was before us, he said AUKUS was focused on Pillar 1. We're familiar with Pillar 1. As a matter of fact, I faced a very lonely period in 2023 as a stick in the mud on this deal, which I did not intend to be. I wanted the Biden administration to invest more in the submarine industrial base, which eventually it did. But do we know anything more about the submarine industrial base now than we did before the review was complete? And what did we achieve by reviewing this deal for more than half a year that we didn't know beforehand?
Mr. Chairman, the Secretary of War directed the Undersecretary of Policy to lead this review to ensure it aligned with the President's intent, which is for it to be as successful as possible on a sustainable basis. Part of that was taking into account the submarine industrial base, production timelines, capacity issues, many of which, sir, that you've led on fixing over many years, but continue to be a challenge, as this now CNO testified recently. We did get, I think, additional insight into the state of things and where we are going on the production issue, on other aspects, and again, all with a very clear and focused intent, collaborative across the interagency and with our Australian counterparts, with the goal of making this as strong and enduring as possible, because it is our view, consistent with what the President said with Prime Minister Albanese recently, that it is in our interest for this to work. We do gain significant benefit from it, and so we want to make it as strong as possible.
Well, I have violated my own edict and gone 45 seconds over. But it would have been unfair to you not to let you answer the question. Supplement it in the second round, if you might, and in the questions for the record. I recognize Senator Reid. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Velez Green, you have been in the policy shop since the very beginning. In fact, you were the acting undersecretary until April 2025. Then you became Secretary Colby's senior advisor. And as we all know, since September 2nd, the administration has conducted 16 lethal strikes off the coast of Argentina and in the Pacific, Venezuela, and in the Pacific, killing 67 individuals. What's your understanding of the strategic goal of this operation?
Thank you, Mr. Ranking Member. President Trump has been very clear that the day in which narco-terrorists can operate freely in this hemisphere is over, and he has directed the Department of War, in close coordination with other members of the interagency, to see to that effect. The Department of War has been engaged in that effort, including in part through the operations that you're referencing, and it is my understanding that the core intent of that is, again, to protect the American people against narcotics that have, frankly, devastated this country. And I've just offered this something I feel quite strongly in support of the President on, in part because I come from a community that was affected by this. So that is my understanding of the President's intent and why it matters.
Now, since you've been there from day one, can you give me your best estimate of how much it costs to maintain multiple ships, B-2 aircraft, F-35s, a Marine detachment, et cetera? How much per day are we spending down there?
Senator, that information is available. I can confirm that I know exactly where I'll find it. I'm happy to come back to you and share as much of it as possible, make sure I
Well,
give you
if
accurate
you
information.
know exactly what you'll find, can you give us your best estimate now?
Mr. Ranking Member, I wouldn't feel comfortable estimating.
I
without
would
having
feel comfortable if you answered the question.
So-
It's an estimate.
Mr. Ranking Member, I would not be possible for me to give you an estimate with confidence that it is close to the number at this time.
So you are basically one of the key people in the Policy Department of the Department of Defense, and you don't even have a rough estimate of how much we're spending every day in a major operation. In fact, we haven't had that many ships in the Caribbean since the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Mr. Ranking Member, that information is part of the process. I want to make sure anything I say to you in this setting is accurate.
So
That is
when
why-
will you deliver that answer to us, Mr. Green?
I'm sorry, Mr. Ranking Member.
When will you deliver that answer to us, Mr. Green?
I would be pleased to deliver it to you as quickly as possible.
Which is tomorrow?
Mr. Ranking Member, I'll work through it as quickly as possible with the Legislative Affairs
you.
team.
Let me turn now to Mr. Dill. First of all, your children are extremely well behaved. Congratulations. One of the aspects, as I mentioned in my opening statement, is that we have maintained a apolitical military, and include in that the civilians in the Department of Defense. It's just been announced today that the OMB and OPM are directing that agencies set up hiring committees, and that federal civilian employees will be subject to these committees. They will be staffed by political appointees, the majority of them. Are you going to allow sort of political choices in the advancement or hiring of individuals in the Department of Defense?
Ranking Member Reed, I appreciate bringing up the topic, and I appreciate your time yesterday.
Yes, sir.
Speaking about your thoughts on this matter. If confirmed, you have my commitment that I'll certainly not politicize and will respect the status of all career officials, whether that's in uniform or out of uniform in the department. I'm not familiar with the committee that you're referencing. I'll certainly take a look at that if confirmed, and I will always be focused on honoring the nonpartisan status of our career workforce.
But to my knowledge, and I suspect your knowledge too, hiring has been done very explicitly on non-political grounds in the Department of Defense, and there is not, as yet, I believe, I could be corrected, a committee of principally political appointees deciding who gets hired and who gets appointed. Is that your understanding too?
I'm not aware of that committee you're referencing, Ranking Member Reed. If confirmed, I would certainly look into the status of such a committee, and I would always strive to honor the nonpartisan status of our career workforce.
Thank you. Dr. Todd, I think a quick question. We talked about this yesterday, and I only have 3 seconds. But we are, in some respects, suffering readiness issues with regard to deployment of troops to the border and to other missions that are not specifically focused on tactical operations, military operations. How do you propose to make up that difference in readiness?
Well, Senator, if confirmed for the position, I would take a look at what missions they are performing on the border, how those missions impact the readiness to perform other warfighting missions, and then work with the services to identify any gaps and identify any refit and regeneration requirements so that they can meet other missions once they have redeployed.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Senator Fisher, you're recognized for 5 minutes and 40 seconds.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's great. That's great. Thanks to our members of our panel today and to your families as well for your willingness to continue to serve this country. Mr. Velez-Green, do you agree that Congress has a significant role to play in developing American security policy?
Yes, Senator.
If that's true, I've been disappointed with the quality of engagement this committee has had from the Office of the Undersecretary of Policy. And as my colleagues noted on Tuesday and also today, that wasn't the case with the first Trump administration. I strongly support peace through strength, and I know that you and I all share many of those same goals, including significantly increasing munitions production capacity. Mr. Velez-Green, do you agree that meaningfully engaging with Congress is necessary for the department to ultimately receive the authorities and the funding that are needed to implement peace through strength?
Yes, Senator. And if I may, I would just offer my own deep respect for the Article I branch, and this committee in particular, the expertise of its members included. This was something I believe that the chairman referenced as well. I'm very cognizant of the distinction between notifications and consultations.
Okay, thank you. If we do have areas of disagreement, for example, how best to support our allies, our partners, would you agree that a healthy discussion with members of this committee would still be valuable?
Yes, Senator.
And if you agree with all this, what steps would you take as the deputy to improve the quality of engagements between policy and this committee?
Senator, thank you. I do recognize.
Speak a little.
I'm sorry for that. Not typically a problem I have. I do quite recognize the frustrations voiced today as well as earlier this week. If confirmed, you have my commitment to lean us far forward in engaging proactively with Congress, including on matters of consultation and not just notification, while of course doing my part to protect the Secretary's and the President's decision space. That is something that I recognize to be valuable for all the reasons that you described, Senator, as well as personally having been on the receiving end of having difficulty getting information when I was staffing a member on this committee.
Thank
so you do
you.
have my commitment to this effect.
We've seen years and years of underinvestment and I think short-sighted decision-making in the United States. And the country is now faced with the reality that we must modernize all aspects of our nuclear deterrent forces simultaneously. Mr. Velez-Green, if confirmed, will you commit to working within the department and with this committee to fully modernize our nuclear forces, and that includes NC3 systems and infrastructure?
Senator, if confirmed, I will be a fierce advocate for that.
Thank you. As Undersecretary of Defense for Policy, you would become a member of the Nuclear Weapons Council, and in your role as the Deputy Undersecretary, you may be involved in working with the Council to execute their oversight responsibilities. What issues do you think are the most important for the Council to address?
Senator, I have not been involved with NWC meetings to this point, and it is something that, if confirmed, I would look forward to engaging on. With respect to the specifics that I would encourage them to focus on, it really would be through the frame that you referenced. I do believe our nation's nuclear deterrent is the bedrock of our defense. I recognize we face very unique challenges sustaining the existing infrastructure while modernizing, developing, and fielding these new platforms, in addition to thinking about some of the more theater-specific options that you have led on. If confirmed, that is the framework within which I would approach this, and what I would be looking for are the pain points where additional leadership attention or resourcing would be required to break through, and I would be committed, if confirmed, to working closely with you and this committee to that end.
I appreciate that answer. Thank you very much. Mr. Payne, thank you for meeting with me. I appreciated our conversations. I was encouraged to hear in your opening remarks that your top priority will be to focus CAPE on independent analysis. Why do you think that's so important?
Senator, I thank you very much as well for the opportunity to meet with you, and I appreciated our conversation. I think it's extremely important, and I agree with you, that independent analysis is absolutely crucial. I think first and foremost, as Mr. Chairman mentioned earlier, so that it's not impacted by biases or other outside influences. And I absolutely think that red teaming and an iron sharpens iron perspective, both internal to CAPE and external to CAPE, are very important. And I would look forward to working with you and the committee to ensure that CAPE operates in that manner.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Senator Fisher. Senator Hirono.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and welcome to all of our nominees. I ask the initial two questions that I will ask each of you, and we'll start with Mr. Dill and go down the line, relevant to fitness to serve. Since you became a legal adult, have you ever made unwanted requests for sexual favors or committed any verbal or physical harassment of a sexual nature?
No, Senator.
Go down the line, please.
No, Senator.
No, Senator.
No, Senator.
Have you ever faced discipline or entered into a settlement related to this kind of conduct?
No, Senator.
No, Senator.
No, Senator.
No, Senator.
We've had a number of hearings in this committee where various concerns have been raised about the politicization of various departments, clearly the Department of Justice, but also the Department of Defense. And I've been concerned about the President and Secretary Hegseth's politicization of the military, basically by sending military assets to our cities, for example. I'd like to get each of you to commit to supporting an apolitical military. Yes or no, please? Mr. Dill?
Yes, Senator, if confirmed, you'd certainly have my commitment to maintain a political military.
Apolitical. Okay, thank you. Go down the line, please.
Yes, Senator.
Yes, Senator.
Yes, Senator.
Did you say yes?
Yes, Senator.
Thank you very much. Mr. Velez-Green, if confirmed, you will help write and implement the National Defense Strategy, NDS. In your view, what nation is the most significant threat to U.S. national security and global stability?
Senator, thank you for the question. Secretary Hegseth has said publicly that the forthcoming National Defense Strategy will focus on defending the U.S. homeland, strengthening deterrence against China in the Indo-Pacific, as well as increasing burden sharing with our allies and partners around the world and revitalizing the American defense industrial base.
So the question of the Homeland Security and that aspect, because up to now we have been very focused on Indo-Pacific and China as a pacing threat. And so there are concerns about what direction this regime is going with regard to continuing to view China as a pacing threat and the assets that need to be there for us to contend with China. So you acknowledge that China will remain a pacing threat, although not quite sure how all of that is going to play out. So I'm wondering, though, how is a commitment to recognizing China as a pacing threat, how is that being acknowledged when the department is redirecting its focus and resources away from the Indo-Pacific, for example, such as moving an aircraft carrier to South America and other assets along those lines?
Senator, thank you again for this question. The Secretary has said publicly that China remains our pacing threat for purposes of force management, development, and design. The question of how that interacts with our focus on homeland defense, that's something that we work through on a daily basis, including by making sure, in effect, we've been tasked to do both, to prioritize both of these things. And so as we're working through that, we're very careful to deconflict resourcing requirements and ensure we are resourcing both those priorities consistent with the President's intent as relayed and directed by the Secretary.
I think it remains to be seen how all of this is going to be reflected in the resources that will go toward the homeland. I mean, we're all for homeland security, of course, but it's how that is done in view of China's activities, continuing activities, and particularly in the Indo-Pacific area. So, Dr. Todd, the DoD continues to fund costly non-reimbursable Department of Homeland Security border missions and continues to expand domestic deployments to American cities without being reimbursed. In a budget-constrained environment, how does continuing non-reimbursable spending on the border mission impact DoD's ability to deter China's aggressive actions in the Indo-Pacific area? Dr. Todd.
Senator Hirono, the readiness of our forces is critical, and the missions they conduct contribute to their readiness for future operations abroad. I do not currently have information concerning the non-reimbursement for support through Homeland Security. My basic understanding from my past experience is that there are statutes under Title X that allow support to federal law enforcement and local law enforcement if it does not take too much from the requirements of the department.
I'm running out of time. Maybe I'll have another 30 seconds or so, but there is little question that a lot of resources are being deployed to the president's desire to enforce what he considers his immigration agenda. And there are questions as to how much of this aspect of what he wants to do is going to be using military or DoD resources. And it's amounting to the millions. Thank you very much, Mr.
Thank you.
Chairman.
And of course, we will have an opportunity for a second round. Thank you very much, Senator Hirono. Senator Rounds.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, let me just say thank you to all of you for your offer of additional service to our country. Mr. Velez-Green, the one issue that I've continued to push here has been the issue of spectrum and the defense of it. Forcing the department to vacate the 3.1 to 3.45 gigahertz and the 7.4 to 8.4 gigahertz bands of the spectrum, or to share them with other users in a suboptimal manner, would have severe negative impacts on our warfighting capabilities, including homeland defense missions and force protection of our deployed troops. I've heard from now 51 senior defense officials who agree with that assessment. Do you agree with the assessment that forcing the department to share those covered bands with commercial interests or with other federal users in a suboptimal manner would negatively impact critical defense systems?
Yes, Senator, and if confirmed, I look forward to supporting efforts to ensure the department has access to spectrum required to defend our nation.
Including those areas that I just mentioned?
Yes, Senator.
Thank you. Let me go on just a little bit. As you can tell from the discussions that have occurred here, there's a real concern here about not only the ability for our country to maintain and to be prepared for any kind of response in the Indo-Pacific region with our pacing threat. There's also a concern that we have to be able to maintain our capabilities around the rest of the world. So let me just work through this a little bit, because I think one of the issues that you're going to get hit up with on this is that during your time at Heritage, you repeatedly called for prioritizing Asia over other theaters. You also argued that focusing defense resources on other theaters, such as Europe, has, and I quote, detracted from our ability to strengthen deterrence against China. So I want to work my way through just a few questions with you. And we talked about this when you were in my office. In June, President Trump ordered strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities. Did this use of defense resources in the Middle East detract from the president's counter-China policy? Simple yes or a no would be good.
No, Senator.
Okay. In September, President Trump issued an executive order assuring the security of the state of Qatar, in which President Trump committed to acting militarily, if necessary, to defend the state of Qatar. Would the use of military force to defend Qatar detract from the president's counter-China policy, in your view?
Senator, if directed by the president, we would field forces to defend Qatar as directed. And in that process, we'd work to ensure that we do that in a way that reinforces our ability to deter China.
Okay. Saudi...
Mr. Velez-Green, you're doing great, but if you just move the whole speaker system over closer, that's good.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
Sorry for that.
Just we'll get comfortable there. Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman will visit Washington later this month. Riyadh and the Trump administration are reportedly discussing a defense pact, and the Saudis have sought formal U.S. guarantees to defend the kingdom, as well as access to more advanced U.S. weaponry, according to Reuters. If President Trump signs such an agreement, would the dedication of defense resources to Saudi Arabia's defense detract from the president's policy of deterring China? A yes or a no?
Senator Rounds, here as well, if directed, we would flow forces and posture them to support the president's intent in defending Saudi. I would also, Senator, just say unequivocally that it is my view the United States has interests at stake in the Middle East, that we should not withdraw from the Middle East, and that we can and should adopt a posture in the Middle East that not only vindicates our interests in that region, but also, and again, complements and reinforces our ability to deter China at the same time.
Okay. Fair to say that the United States has to be in a position with our defense strategy to look at deterrence in more than one theater?
Yes, Senator.
Okay. Senator Sullivan, one of my colleagues here, as well as some of my other colleagues, spoke on Tuesday about the fact that Congress has been left entirely in the dark on the Pentagon's strategic documents, the NDS in particular. Setting that aside, I just kind of want to ask this in a little bit different way. First, given that you were the acting Undersecretary of Defense for Policy at that time, what interagency engagements did you have with the National Security Council, the White House, State Department, and others during the development phase before its publication in March?
This is with respect to the interim National Defense Strategic
Yep.
Guidance, I believe. We developed that document in direct coordination with the Secretary's front office, support his direction and intent. With respect to interagency coordination or notification, those are conversations. There were discussions, but I'm afraid it wouldn't be appropriate for me to discuss the particulars in this setting.
I understand. So what I would ask, are you prepared to provide this committee with evidence of those in a classified setting?
I'd be prepared to share as much as possible, absolutely, in a classified setting.
Very good. I will ask for that as in my questions for the record. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Senator Round. Senator Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, all of you, for your continued willingness to serve our country. Mr. Payne, I serve as the co-chair of the Defense Modernization Caucus with Senator Kramer, where our focus is on driving innovation and ensuring that the United States can rapidly develop and acquire and field advanced capabilities to sustain our strategic advantage. And I'm very interested in the department's proposed shift from the traditional defense acquisition system to what it's now calling the warfighting acquisition system. And this initiative aims to accelerate capability delivery, and that's an objective that I strongly support. But it also compresses decision timelines and may reduce the visibility into individual program costs that Congress has long relied on for oversight and accountability. So, Mr. Payne, if confirmed, what specific steps would you take so the Office of Cost Assessment and Program Evaluation continues to provide Congress with clear, consistent, and auditable data across the new portfolio-based structure?
Senator, I appreciate your commitment and the opportunity to discuss this issue. As you correctly have indicated, CAPE has an important role to play statutorily in the acquisition process, and that role is providing independent cost estimates prior to milestone decisions. If I'm confirmed, it'll be a top priority of mine to ensure that we as CAPE streamline the cost reporting procedures, both to keep pace with the accelerated acquisition process, as well as to make it to facilitate the entry of non-traditional vendors in industry into the acquisition process. If confirmed, you'd have my commitment that we will deliver those cost estimates to you, to the committee, and to Congress.
I appreciate that. Thank you. And Mr. Velez-Green, I recently released a AI for America roadmap that lays out some ideas for safe and ethical use of AI, but also how do we deal with transition for folks to new careers and jobs, and some of the infrastructure challenges that we will face with power and water. But on the safe and ethical use of AI, as competitors around the world accelerate the development of AI and autonomous systems, they often put in few safeguards. But here in the United States, we have to both maintain a technological edge in developing these systems while also sustaining high ethical standards and responsible governance. I think that's critical. So if confirmed, how do you plan to shape the department's approach to AI and autonomous systems to maintain the U.S. strategic advantage in these systems while also upholding ethical standards?
Senator, thank you for your leadership on this issue. If confirmed, I do commit to supporting the development of these systems in a way that does enhance our warfighting advantage while maintaining, as you said, rightly so, our ethical standards. In terms of how specifically I would go about that, I've not worked closely on this issue to this point, but I expect that I would start with working with the relevant teams to understand the requirements that these technologies can help us to support in an effective way, and then working from there, understand, okay, what are the different ways it can do so? How does that map against ethical considerations, and making sure that we are meeting both of those targets at the same time as we elevate options for further consideration?
Do you think AI systems should be used as a decision maker in the kill chain?
Senator, I had the opportunity to work closely with, early on in my career, with some of the nation's leading thinkers on where autonomy should exist, and the man in the loop, on the loop, out of the loop with respect to different functions, to the question of where AI can or should exist in a particular decision-making system, especially as we talk about the kill chain. I think it really depends on the specifics. But again, the framework within which I would address this problem, if confirmed, is exactly the one that you offered, which is what are the warfighting requirements we seek to support, and then how do we do that in an ethical manner, recognizing that both of those are very important.
So it sounds like you don't have any red lines there, and certainly AI and autonomous systems could help compress timelines dramatically, make faster decisions, and where to position forces. And I think we really need to consider how to, quickly and safely integrate AI systems into our warfighting decision-making process. I think it could give us a strategic advantage. I also think we need to be careful about turning over some really key decisions, especially on using kinetic effects against people, targets. At least right now, I think we need to think long and hard about ethical implications of allowing AI systems to make the decision to kill people.
We look forward to reading your paper.
I will send it to the office.
Thank you very much. Senator Kramer.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for being here and for your willingness to step up again, especially to your families. It's great to see, and I'm never disturbed by the noise of children. It's really quite a blessing, so thank you. Real quickly, Mr. Payne, thank you for our discussion in my office. You stated then, as you've stated several times, the importance of CAPE's independence as an evaluator, obviously. I mean, you really are. CAPE really is the truth teller, if you will, on cost and performance. However, I have been concerned in recent years that the independent assessment sometimes gets diluted by advocacy of a particular platform or program. And sometimes it's my sense that advocacy is masked by scenarios, chosen scenarios of evaluation. Does that happen at CAPE, either inadvertently or by some bias or even orders from leadership?
Senator, thank you for the time that you gave me in your office in our conversation. At times in the past, yes, I have seen CAPE take on an advocacy role that I think is inappropriate for an independent analytic organization. And if confirmed, you have my commitment that my priority would be focusing CAPE on its true mission, which is being an advisory, not a policy-making or decision-making organization.
That's encouraging. Thank you for that. Mr. Velez-Green, this summer, the HMS Prince of Wales was sailing, as you probably know, to the Pacific. It's been reported by some sources I actually do trust, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate his admonition up front about untrustworthy sources. But Undersecretary Colby had made a statement reportedly to the British in a meeting along the lines of, is it too late to call it back? We don't want you there. First of all, do you have knowledge of that discussion, and did he in fact say that to British leaders?
Senator, it would not be appropriate for me to comment on private discussions between two different governments in this setting. But what I can say, if you will allow me, is that the Secretary has said publicly that it is most important for our European allies to focus on their home theater as they work to build out their capacity, especially as we work through the simultaneity problems that Senator Rounds has spoken about. So that is the guidance that the Secretary has offered in a public setting. And my personal view is I think that does make a lot of sense because we believe in a NATO that is as strong as possible, that is a sincerely held view. My personal belief is we have an interest in NATO being as strong as possible on an enduring basis with the United States deeply engaged. But for that to happen, especially as we face the rise of China, our allies simply have to step up and focus those resources where they're needed most.
Mr. Velez-Green, are you quoting the Secretary there or the Deputy Secretary?
It is, if my recollection serves me, and I'm confident that the Secretary Hegseth, has said publicly that it is important for European allies to focus on Europe first.
Well, thank you for that. Although to the original question and the point that I understand you think would be inappropriate to speak to, there are other agencies for whom international relationships are the higher priority, not the least of which, of course, is the State Department. And so I'd be interested to know if this position was reconciled with the State Department, or if this was just again, a private conversation, to your point, or for that matter, if other allies were consulted, allies that welcome the British having a ship in the Pacific. Because this gets into well beyond what's going on just at the Pentagon, it would seem to me, and not to mention the White House.
Senator, the Undersecretary has been ruthless and specific about ensuring that we focus on military matters, and in this case, thinking about the allocation of defense resources across theaters. We also interact on an extremely regular basis with our colleagues across the interagency, including the NSC, including State Department, on a wide range of issues, the IC as well, to ensure that we are having those conversations given the cross-cutting equities.
In my remaining seconds, Mr. Chairman, on Tuesday, your colleague, Mr. Dahmer, as I'm sure you watched, repeatedly said that he wasn't aware of any, quote, pause of aid to Ukraine. Can you clarify whether there was or there wasn't, and how could he not have been aware if there was? Because, I mean, I have a DOD news release that states there was.
Senator, I can say categorically that policy leadership neither ordered nor even recommended a pause to any weapons shipments to Ukraine as it was reported. Full stop, no caveats. That reporting was completely inaccurate, in substantial part because we do not have the authority to order any adjustment to weapons deliveries one way or the other. I am aware of brief disruptions to certain deliveries as a result of the capabilities review that Mr. Purnell referenced in the July 2nd transcript that I believe was referenced on Tuesday, but I am not aware of a pause ordered by the Secretary to any of the weapons shipments at the time.
Well, we may have dispute terms and titles, but I mean, it's a DOD news release. I don't know what else to say. Mr. Chairman, thank you. My time's up.
Senator Scott.
So can I just follow up with what Senator just asked about? It says, this is from the Department of War. It says, this capability review is being conducted to ensure U.S. military aid aligns with our defense priorities.
I'm having trouble hearing Senator Scott.
Okay. It says, what we've done here at the department, it talks about how there's been a pause. It says, now some assistance provided to Ukraine as well as assistance to other nations is on pause as the Defense Department reviews its own capabilities to ensure what it opts to provide to other nations. It never shortchanges itself in the process, said Pentagon spokesperson Sean Parnell during a briefing today at the Pentagon. That sure sounds like a pause.
Senator, if I may offer, I believe what Mr. Parnell said in response to a question was that he couldn't go into detail about what weapons were paused and when and what. With respect to the use of the term pause in this context, I can't speak to the word choice that Ms. Parnell used in that particular context. Again, what I am aware of is that there were brief disruptions to delivery of weapons associated with the implementation of the capabilities review that Mr. Parnell was discussing at that time. And candidly, Senator, if I may, with respect to the chairman's comment earlier, I do believe this is a case where more proactive engagement from us would have been helpful, at least to share our side of what we understood to have happened. And that's something I do take on board, and if confirmed, I'm committed to addressing in a forthright manner.
So why did the president have to come out and disagree with the Department of War just a few days later?
Senator, I would not presume to speak for the president in any fraction or matter. I would simply say that, again, I recognize, I understand the reports. I understand the reports about policy's role in this. I've offered my categorical statement on what is factual, and that's something I'm prepared to stake my credibility on in this setting.
So you don't know why the president had to disagree with what was said?
It is my understanding that there were discussions publicly in reactions to the disruption, which was characterized by the media as a pause. But again, without it, I'm not sure where they sort of asserted that basis based on my understanding of what transpired.
Okay, so I've had the opportunity to meet with lots of our allies, and they want to buy American products. But what they're being told is they're being blindsided when they're told they can't buy American defense products. They're told they can't buy our products. Our allies are told the last minute that a brigade is leaving. And some of these are weapons that they've already purchased. What's frustrating, number one, is they want to invest in our country. We want them to invest in our, help jobs in our country. We want them to build up their defense. And then they can't buy. It doesn't make any sense, and it seems like it's completely inconsistent with where President Trump is and Secretary Hegseth is. it seems to me that there ought to be a priority that our military should make it, that we get our friends and allies to buy American manufacturing, and we also don't put ourselves in a position that they don't know what our priorities are. So, and it seems like whether it's the pause with the Ukraine or moving the troops out of Romania, it doesn't seem like it doesn't seem like what's coming out is consistent with what the president wants to do. So, can you address that? Do you think it's consistent with what? I mean, who do you think you work for? Do you think you work for the president, or is there somebody else making decisions?
Senator, there is no question in my mind, or certainly not in the Undersecretary's mind, and I feel comfortable speaking to that. We work for the President of the United States. That is our job, and if confirmed, it will continue to be my job. That is something that we take extremely seriously, and we have, including in every instance that was referenced on Tuesday, which I can speak to in more details appropriate. In practical terms, we do that in a variety of ways. Secretary Hegseth himself is ruthless about ensuring that we are always very tightly aligned with the president. He's in constant contact with the president and senior leadership team there, and the president has expressed his confidence in the secretary publicly. We engage very tightly with the secretary and the deputy secretary to ensure we are always in lockstep with them, because we do, in fact, work for the president.
So earlier this week, one of your colleagues said that we were briefed 4 times on a brigade reduction in Romania. I asked him, I was informed. I'm on the committee, been on the committee for almost 7 years. So do you have a list of the dates and locations of these briefings?
Senator, I believe the correct term would have been notifications. We did notify Congress on multiple occasions prior to the public notification, which I can speak to in perhaps a little bit more detail in this setting and in more detail in another, just out of respect for the individuals involved. But I can't say that with confidence.
Can you tell me the dates of the notifications?
Yes, sir. The pre-notification was first provided to congressional leadership staff on the 23rd and the 24th. It was provided again on the 27th, and then a cabinet was set on the 28th, and a public announcement was on the 29th.
And was Romania and our NATO allies, were they notified and briefed ahead of time?
Yes, Senator.
Do you know when?
Senator, the Romanians were briefed at a very senior level on the 27th. And
when was it announced?
The announcement was on the 29th.
Do you think that's enough time?
Senator, the Romanians themselves said the decision was expected, and that's in part because we've socialized and been candid with them about how the Secretary has directed us to think about, again, consistent with the President's intent, U.S. force posture in NATO as we work to ensure that alliance is as strong as possible, even as we deal with the threat from China and strengthen our homeland defenses.
I think the perception is that there's some disagreement between what is being put out and what the president wants, and I think it's going to be pretty important that you guys figure out how to stop that.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Senator Scott. Mr. Velez-Green, I would just say the Congress was not consulted about this. I think I can say with certainty about that. Senator Kane, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and congratulations to the witnesses for your nominations. Mr. Velez-Green, I'm going to ask some questions that I asked of a witness earlier in the week, just trying to find out about where decisions are being made. I'm not going to ask you about the content of discussions, but rather your involvement in your current capacity in such discussions. Have you been involved in discussions about military strikes on boats in the Caribbean and Pacific?
Senator, if I recall the line of questioning on Tuesday, I think where it evolved was to use my involvement in these one way or the other to identify what's being planned or not. What I can say is I'm involved in a wide range of discussions related to a wide range of contingency planning. To be more specific, I think would be inappropriate in this setting.
And why is it inappropriate for you to tell me whether you were involved in such discussions? I'm not asking you about the content of the discussions.
Senator, for the simple reason that some planning is sensitive, and I want to preserve the Secretary and the President's decision space on that.
Have you been involved in discussions about the legal rationale for the strikes I referenced?
Senator, I would defer to the Office of General Counsel. I know they are working that very hard, and I do believe, I've at least heard in recent conversations this week with members that there's been additional information provided, but on the specifics of that, I would have to defer to OGC.
Have you been involved in the composition of the list of designated terrorist organizations that the President is using to direct the strikes?
No, Senator.
Have you been involved in the discussion about particular strikes and whether there is evidence to justify a particular strike in a particular instance?
Again, Senator, speaking to my personal involvement in operations one way or the other at that level of detail, especially given the sensitivities, I think would be inappropriate in this setting.
Have you been involved in discussions on a policy basis, not on a particular strike instance, but on a policy basis about when we should interdict versus when we should strike?
Senator, what I will say is that from a policy standpoint, we strongly support the President's intent. And just as a general staffing matter, both in my current capacity and certainly if confirmed, these are the kinds of questions that I would commit to working through in very close coordination with the Office of General Counsel and with sensitivity to ensuring that they are lawful, they're also executable, and that they account for readiness considerations across theaters as others.
The reason I ask about that one, we've been given no information, and I have read the legal opinion. We've been given no information about policy decisions about when to strike versus when to interdict. And so that's really what I'm asking. Have you been involved in discussions about that topic? I'm not asking you the content of the discussions.
Senator, I understand. I would just, the phrase policy decisions, I want to clarify. Policy is not a decision-making organization. We advise those decisions held up at the Secretary or above level. It is our job simply to inform.
Let's just call it a topic then. Have you been involved in discussions on the topic of whether we should strike or whether we should interdict?
Again, Senator, with sensitivity to this particular issue at this particular time, I don't think this would be an appropriate setting for me to discuss my
Have you been
involvement
involved in any discussion about a potential land invasion of Venezuela?
Senator, again, it would not be appropriate for me to comment on my involvement in any particular contingency plan.
Have you been involved in any discussion about the use of U.S. military within or against Nigeria?
Senator, again, I'm sorry, it would not be appropriate for me to comment on my particular involvement.
Okay, well, let me just point out that I asked you about 8 questions, and the answer to one of the questions was no, I've not been involved. You said you had not been involved in a discussion about the composition of the list of designated terrorist organizations. And on all of the other ones, you did not say no. You instead said it wouldn't be an appropriate topic to get into in this hearing. And so I'm taking that as a yes on all the others. Since you were willing to say no in the instance where you hadn't been involved in discussions, the fact that you could not give me a no on the other questions suggests that the answer to those questions is yes. And that is very, very troubling. It's troubling to me that discussions are going on and decisions are being made about war without reading Congress into it. Just yesterday in the Supreme Court, Justice Gorsuch asked the Solicitor General of the United States about whether the Congress could delegate war powers to the President. And the President's own attorney, his Solicitor General, said no, that would be an abdication, not a delegation. These are powers for Congress. And the unwillingness, or to this day, inability of the Pentagon to answer basic questions. Mr. Chair, I'll just say, I had a chance to review the legal rationale the other day, and it's classified, so I'm not going to go into it. But someone, a Republican member, was looking at it right before me and had a full panoply of DOD and DOJ officials in the room to answer that member's questions. They had all exited the room when I was there. So there were people there to watch me read the document, but they said they could not answer any questions that I had about the document. So I remain very, very concerned, and it's kind of a timely question. We're going to have a vote on a war powers resolution about no war in Venezuela without a vote of Congress later today, and the answers of this witness suggest it's a very timely and important matter that we'd be taking up now. So thank you, Mr. Chair. I yield back.
Thank you very much. Senator Schmidt, you are recognized, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me just say from the outset, I do think that I've watched sort of the evolution of some of the criticism of this administration and particular actors. And I think much of the criticism, which is cloaked in terms of transparency and communication, really is just an effort to undermine a shift in our foreign policy orientation, which I support, which is to realism, as opposed to some of the failed points of view that have dominated permanent Washington over the last 30 years. That's how I see it. Now, people can disagree. That's how I see it. So the point of my questions, Mr. Valdez-Green, I want to ask you, in recent months, there has been speculation and criticism aimed at Undersecretary of War Colby and his team, much of it anonymous and misleading and divorced from reality. Some have suggested that the policy office is freelancing or undermining the president's agenda. Nothing could be further from the truth. These attacks don't reflect a policy dispute as much as a resistance from those invested in maintaining a foreign policy status quo that has repeatedly failed the American people. I think it's important to set the record straight. The job of the policy arm of the Pentagon is to provide informed recommendations to the decision makers in the chain of command, President Trump and Secretary Hegseth. In no way are they undermining the president, the secretary, or the administration's defense policy objectives. On the contrary, these are professionals who translate the president's directives into cohesive strategies and generate the forces to achieve them. You've been in this business for a while. I want to give you an opportunity to speak for yourself. But there's been much about this tired tropes about isolationism, which is a joke. And I think what this is a refocusing on the homeland and the Indo-Pacific. But let's just talk about that for a second. Do you think, I want you to speak for yourself, do you think we should abandon NATO? What about the rest of Europe? Do you think we should abandon Europe?
No, Senator, in the strongest possible terms.
Okay. I think part of the discussion is, instead of just flowery rhetorical verses that have been spun for a while, Europe does need to step up more for their own defense, this conversation about burden sharing. And people laughed at President Trump about this the first time, but it's actually happening now. This is good for us. It's good for Europe. But I think some people revel in the dependency that we have essentially subsidized their socially liberal policy in their governments for far too long. Now, I think that they are stepping up, I think, in a much more meaningful way. That is a positive development, again, for everybody. Mr. Valdez-Green, I want to ask you, you and Undersecretary Colby are working tirelessly to get this right. You're not making grand foreign policy pronouncements. You're certainly not disrupting the president's agenda. On the contrary, you're working hard to ask the tough questions that are necessary to lead this strategy moving forward. And of course, the media is constantly coming after President Trump for this policy shift in his team. So it's no surprise they're coming after you and your boss on aid to Ukraine, or the relationship with Japan, or the AUKUS review. They've even claimed that you oppose sending a carrier to the Middle East for Operation Midnight Hammer. Would you like to say anything about these particular accusations?
Senator, I would just offer that the reporting on each of those episodes was inaccurate, and I believe in at least a couple of them the complete opposite. For instance, the article with respect to the Undersecretary's alleged position about forces to support Operation Midnight Hammer, the opposite of reality. I categorically, a few moments ago, stated that reporting that policy ordered or even recommended a pause in shipments of weapons to Ukraine was inaccurate without any caveats. That remains my position. And the others as well. With the 2+2, we were in touch with Tokyo at the time. They disputed the report contemporaneously. There were other reasons. I won't cite them in this setting out of respect for the Japanese. And then on AUKUS, this is something that from the very beginning was always oriented on strengthening the agreement consistent with the president's intent as stated publicly, and it was always done very collaboratively. And just the last point I would offer here is this is not just me saying it. There's paper trails for most of this. This is not conjecture.
And the last question, in the time that I have remaining, I've heard consternation from some on the other side of the dais that focusing on the homeland is sort of a taboo topic and unimaginable. Somehow our focus on the homeland precludes us from focusing on the Indo-Pacific. Would you like to address this sort of false claim?
Senator, we've been directed to do both, and that is exactly what we are doing from a force management perspective as we think about developing forces to support the strategy handed down by the Secretary in line with the President's intent. I would also just offer that, and I think very sensitive to a question earlier, there is not a belief that to do these things we have to abandon the rest of the world. And I think actually doing that would be counterproductive, because we do have interest in the rest of the world, and the simultaneity problem the Senator Rounds and others have spoken about, that is real. So we do need to stay engaged, I think, in very, very important and critical ways in Europe and in the Middle East, alongside allies and partners that are stepping up. That is, I believe, how we can achieve enduring peace through strength.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Schmidt. Senator Duckworth.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Todd, I want to thank you for the extensive conversation we had prior to this hearing. and you demonstrated to me a deep command of the issues that you will lead, if confirmed. And from how we gather and manage data to how we analyze mishaps and use those lessons to improve safety and readiness. As a former aviator like yourself, and from my perch on this committee and my role as ranking member on the Commerce, Science, and Technology Committee's Subcommittee on Aviation, Space, and Innovation, I am especially committed to aviation safety. Will you, Dr. Todd, commit to working with me on improving aviation safety across the services to include supporting improvements in aviation maintenance and training and coordinating with the FAA?
Yes, Senator Duckworth, and thank you again for meeting. I think we had a very fruitful discussion as a former Army aviator. I believe in the highest standards of aviation safety, training, and readiness, and I would confirm that I will work very closely with you and your staff.
Thank you so much. Mr. Velez-Green, you are nominated to be Deputy Undersecretary of Defense for Policy, leading one of the most complex and consequential offices within the department. In this role, you would be expected to manage a sprawling enterprise that determines our defense strategy and policy across all commands, alliances, theaters, and domains. Is that correct?
Yes, Senator Duckworth, I would be responsible for helping the Undersecretary as he implements his
Thank you.
statutory responsibilities.
So, however, after our meeting, I do have serious concerns about your qualifications to provide strategic, rigorously expert and independent advice, and also your ability to actually lead a large organization to success. Mr. Velez-Green, what is the largest organization you have led, including the number of direct reports that fell under your personal supervision?
Senator, I had the great privilege of leading the policy organization at the beginning of this administration, which was roughly 1,000 individuals, uniformed, career, and contractor. And then as far as direct reports, I believe I had less than 20, more than 10. I'd have to count the assistant secretaries as well as the front office staff and perhaps a few others.
Right, but that 1,000 indirectly that you're claiming was just in your acting USDP role from January to April of this year. So I think it's pretty disingenuous of you to claim you have the necessary vast management experience just because administration thrusts you into this acting role on January 20th for just 3 months. So you have 3 months experience as an acting, given that before then you manage a maximum of 1 to 2 direct reports at most. Predecessors in this role have been in charge of talent and resource management for the complex pool of approximately 800 military, civilians, contractors, and detailees within OSD policy. OSD policy also provides strategic guidance across 11 combatant commands composed of hundreds of thousands of personnel operating all over the world. In my opinion, your meager management experience pales in comparison to the scale of the management challenge that you will be in charge of in this role. Now, let's set the management piece aside. Beyond management, this role also requires a steadfast leader prepared to provide independent, strategic advice on our critical defense partnerships and preparing our joint force to deter enemies and defend American interests. And you have tried to convince me that you can provide that service to the United States. You had previously said that prioritizing assistance to Ukraine to fight Vladimir Putin over preparing our Taiwan and Taiwan's forces in the Pacific would cause Beijing to doubt America's commitment to Taiwan's defense. So let me say again, you said that by prioritizing assistance to Ukraine, we were, in your opinion, we would cause Beijing, this is a direct quote from you, cause Beijing to doubt America's commitment to Taiwan's defense. The United States military's footprints in Southcom AOR is now reaching more than 10% of the Navy's total assets, even before the arrival of the USS Gerald Ford Carrier Strike Group and its accompanying 10,000 additional personnel. Do you agree with Vice President Vance that this is the highest and best use of our military?
Senator, President Trump has been unequivocal that we should prioritize defending our homeland. I come from a community that has been affected by the narcotics of the type that the president has set his sights on here. And so I do believe and strongly support prioritizing defense of our homeland. I would offer, however, that that is not mutually exclusive with also prioritizing and doing what is required to ensure a robust military deterrent in the Western Pacific against China, nor is it mutually exclusive to our ability to remain deeply engaged in Europe and the Middle East in a manner consistent with the president's intent.
So you're saying you disagree with the vice president when he said that the highest and best use of our military in describing the arrival of the USS Gerald Ford Carrier Strike Group and its accompanying 10,000 personnel to the Indo-Pacific?
I apologize. I think that was a long way of saying I do agree with the vice president.
So I do agree with the Vice President, but Jin, you also, I think your logic seems inconsistent. You reject the U.S. opposing Putin because you think it distracts from the Pacific, but you're not brave enough to sound the same alarm as Trump significantly redirects our naval maritime resources to South America, taking away from the Indo-Pacific region, our most maritime area of operation. I'm not quite sure why you would not object to burning the readiness of our already stressed fleet to do a fundamentally law enforcement mission in the Western Hemisphere, nor why you, a vehement defender of deterring the PRC over all else, would not be concerned about the signal these deployments are sending to the PRC about our capability to respond to any aggression in Indo-Pacific. Clearly, your analysis shifts based on the winds around you and who you are trying to please, and I worry that you're unable to apply any consistent and objective rigor to your advising and are unable to speak truth to power, and that our national security will suffer as a result of that.
Well, perhaps you can answer on the record, Mr. Velez-Green. Senator Budd.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, thank you all for being here today and your willingness to serve. Mr. Velez-Green, I appreciated the conversation a few weeks ago in the office. You know, there's been lots of complaints prior to Tuesday and today from my fellow Republicans about a series of issues. I think they all really boil down to communication. I need a firm commitment from you that if my staff or I reach out to you, that I'll hear not just from Office of Legislative Affairs, but I'll hear from you personally in your personal office if we inquire.
Senator, I am prepared to give you that commitment as well as to other members of this committee.
That is a yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Talk about presidential drawdown, or the fourth presidential drawdown authority in regards to Taiwan. Is that on hold?
Senator, candidly, I'm not sure the current status. I would say I have been one of a very prominent and strong advocate for Army Taiwan and making sure they have what's required to defend themselves. I think that's vitally important, not just as a matter of fairness, but also, frankly, from an operational perspective. And if confirmed, you have my strong commitment to continue to advocate to that effect, including by providing options up to higher leadership for their consideration, PDA being one of them.
Thank you.
But is it on hold?
Senator,
was that the question?
Yes. Is the fourth presidential drawdown authority package for Taiwan on hold?
Senator, I'm not sure of the current status, and I'd be happy to share as much as possible while, again, respecting my chain of command.
Thank you. Much has been said about the PRC's objectives in Latin America. What's your assessment of the national security implications of China's reach into the Western Hemisphere? And specifically, as you think about the defense policy of countering cartels, how could DOD simultaneously address the PRC's inroads in Latin America? So 2 birds, 1 stone.
Senator, thank you for the question. In terms of, I'd offer two responses, if I may. One is a question of deconfliction and making sure that as we are resourcing the requirements to execute the department's strategy in line with the President's instructions in the Western Hemisphere, we are also resourcing the requirements to maintain deterrence in the Western Pacific, including soft elements, for instance, that I know are important for North Carolina. With respect to the Western Hemisphere, my view is that this is a multi-pronged effort. I think part of this is with the United States more decisively engaging in the hemisphere of the Department of War, especially. I think that's a very clear signal to partners across the region that this is a priority, that we are leaning forward in ways that the past administration did not, and that as an extension, we are paying more attention. We are provided to work more closely and in different ways than may have been in the past, and so they have opportunities to step up with us in that regard, including by not doing certain things that could be detrimental to our national security, such as engaging with China in certain ways in this hemisphere. I think the Panama Canal instance is a very clear example of the President's intent and how the Department of War and other agencies worked to that effect.
I hope to see that increased engagement, so thank you for your answer. Dr. Todd, if confirmed, how will you judge our strategic readiness to prevail in a conflict with China?
Senator, I think our strategic readiness is critical to understanding how we can deter China and meet our strategic objectives in the Indo-PACOM AOR. I think we would basically continue to gather the readiness data available to us based on the training, education, equipping, and manning of the services. We will look at their preparation for meeting the contingency plans from the Joint Staff and the Geographic Combatant Commanders, We would assess their success from their deployments to meet those mission requirements, and then have a feedback loop to then determine in the future will those capabilities be available to deter China based on their past performance and what we need to do to better prepare them for the future.
So, and what metrics would you use to evaluate the readiness of the joint force?
Well, Senator, there are a number of metrics. I'm not familiar with the specific ones now, but I would take a close look at the contingency planning that we have for Indo-PACOM AOR, what we see as our key objectives and our key threats and challenges. And then as we would run both service-specific and joint exercises, we would then be able to gather the right kind of data, look at assessing that data, and then ensuring that we are taking the right lessons learned to reapply to the preparation of our forces to better, so that they can better execute their missions against China.
Thank you very much. Chairman?
Thank you very much. Senator Sullivan, are you prepared?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman.
You're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I need to get a commitment from all the nominees. First, congratulations on your nomination, and thanks to you and your families for your desire to serve your country again. Most of you have done it already in many capacities, so thank you on that. Can I get a commitment from all of you to come up to Alaska with me and see what General Billy Mitchell called the most strategic place in the world? There's a lot going on in Alaska right now. We got the Russians and Chinese and our AIDAs and our EEZ. We're on the front lines of great power competition. Every day, 6 Russian incursions since August. Doesn't make a lot of news down here, but it's important and it's serious. So can I get a commitment from each of you to join me up in my great state? Why don't we just go through the list here? And have any of you been before?
Senator, absolutely. If confirmed, I'd look forward to making that visit. I have not had the chance yet, and I'd love to do that.
Great.
Senator, I have not been to Alaska yet, but I would absolutely, if confirmed, commit to visiting.
Great.
Senator, I've had the opportunity to visit Alaska multiple times, including J-Bear, and if confirmed, I'd welcome the opportunity to join you in the state.
Great. Thanks, Mr.
Senator Sullivan, I have not visited Alaska yet, but I look forward to doing so.
Good. Well, thank you. And, you know, we had a hearing the other day. I was a little bit hot under the collar on kind of responsiveness. Can I get a commitment from all of you, if confirmed, that you'll work with the committee, the chairman, the ranking member, all of us? There's a lot of knowledge here over the years, decades, centuries, on military matters. We're not always right, but, you know, we want to work with you guys to make you successful. This is a really bipartisan committee. The national defense of our nation is pretty much a bipartisan issue. So can I get a commitment that, if confirmed, that you will work with us, be responsive, you know, get your cell number, things like that? I certainly don't abuse that, but it's important to have a good relationship. Can I get each of yours commitment on that?
Absolutely, Senator.
Yes, Senator.
Great.
Yes, Senator.
Okay.
Yes, Senator.
Mr. Payne, I want to start with you. CAPE, you know, CAPE has an up and down reputation. I've seen it throughout my military career where they do things where you're like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. They do other stuff where you're like, what in the hell are they doing? I need you to commit to me to take a look at this issue of amphibs in the Marine Corps. There's a huge dispute right now between what the Navy has in terms of its capabilities to build amphibs. They're typically not interested in purchasing or building amphibs, or I would just say it's low on their priority. For the Marine Corps, it's kind of number one, right? And for combatant commanders, it's very high up there as well. There's a split right now. I wish the Secretary of the Navy would kind of help us get there, because the Marines think we need a lot more amphibs. The Navy has said, I don't think so. So can you work with me, maybe come in and see me on this? I feel very strongly about the Marine Corps having what we call a 3.0 MEUARG capability. Are you aware what that phrase means?
Yes, Senator.
Do you agree with that phrase? Do you agree with that as a part of our strategy as it deals with amphibs and Marine Corps capability to deploy, kick in doors anywhere in the world?
Senator, yes, my understanding is that that capability is essential to the Marine Corps, to their joint force, to their force design, and to our strategy.
And it's a lot of our combatant commanders think it's a critical capability, so that's another thing. So can I get your commitment to work with me on that?
Yes, Senator.
Mr. Velez-Green, you've written a lot on the homeland. I think that's a important focus. It's kind of the start, really, of national security, I think. I had a good meeting with Undersecretary Colby yesterday, where he walked me through a lot of the pillars of the NDS that the Pentagon's working on right now, which I appreciated a lot. Give me your sense on homeland security, and in particular the Arctic. As I mentioned, there's so much going on. You know, when I first got here, I'll never forget, the Obama administration had its Arctic strategy. I held up in a hearing with the Secretary of Defense and said, this is a joke. It's a joke. Right? It was all about climate change. Had nothing to do with real wars. Mentioned climate change a bunch of times. Mentioned Russia once in a footnote. It was a joke. The Arctic, North Pacific, is not a joke. Like I said, it's the front line of real great power competition. Can you briefly just touch on your views on homeland security as it relates to the Arctic?
Yes, Senator. I would say first and foremost, in cognizant of time, Alaska is the homeland, so we have a responsibility to defend Alaska just as a starting point. I think in terms of defending the lower 48 as well, Alaska has long played a vital role from a missile defense perspective and otherwise. I expect that will continue to be the case for no other reason other than physics and geography. As the FIC becomes harder, the first island chain to operate in, Alaska is already critical. I expect it will become only more critical. With
that, the one big beautiful bill, we got $115 million to reopen the ADAC Navy base, which we want you guys to implement, not fight. But that's an example of what you're talking about.
Yes, Senator. And maybe as just a brief last point, one of the things I took from my visit to Alaska when I was an NSA to a member on this committee was the value of the Arctic training capabilities in Alaska that's just not possible elsewhere and does have application across a variety of AORs. And so that's just another example of Alaska and the Arctic's vital role in our nation's defense.
Great. Good. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Sullivan. And I do suggest to each of you that you wear layers when you pack for Alaska.
We loved having the chairman of the committee up in Alaska.
Absolutely. It was
great.
A wonderful trip, and I'm glad it was in the summertime.
I need to get the ranking member up.
Let me just ask one more line of questioning to Mr. Velez-Green. We acknowledge that that communication, that notification is different from consultation. Would you concede that there really hasn't been any consultation with the Congress on the national defense strategy?
Senator, I'm not aware that there has been formal consultations with Congress on the national defense strategy. I know we interact on a regular basis on a variety of issues related to defense strategy and policy that inform the internal discussions and development process.
Nor the global force posture review.
Senator,
consultation.
I would offer the same response, yes.
That's really not the way it's supposed to work. And on the AUKUS review, I didn't receive any consultation about engaging in a lengthy review, which upset our friends in Australia and cast doubt on whether we were committed to this agreement. Would you agree that there should have been consultation before we embarked on a lengthy review?
Senator, in all cases, I will always be required to, and I think it appropriate to protect my secretaries and the President's decision space. With that said, if confirmed, and as a general matter, you do have my commitment to lean as far forward as possible to proactively engage this committee, including you, Mr. Chairman, and your staff, on matters related to all the issues you described, particularly including in the form of consultations.
Well, this is going to require a change in a mindset. For example, there was no consultation with Congress, but rather a surprise on the department cutting security assistance to the Baltics. Would you concede that there was no consultation, that we were surprised when we were informed through the media about that?
Senator, I know the reporting and the issue that you're referencing. I'm sensitive to the public environment we are in currently. With respect to this, as with the other matters you've referenced, you do have my commitment to engage in a forthright manner if confirmed, including consulting on matters such as these.
I would very much have urged the department not to make that decision. At any rate, I think certainly we've had an airing of some differences of opinion this week, and so I appreciate your response and the tone of your assurances today. Senator Jack Reed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Velez-Green, the President of the United States has created a list of designated terrorist organizations, which he has ordered the Department of Defense to conduct lethal operations against. In fact, the operations are inherently lethal. Part of the logic of how they can do it is that they're destroying ships from a distance, not even coming close into contact. What's the statutory authority for the designated terrorist organization?
Senator, with respect to the legal basis or other legal considerations related to ongoing operations, I would have to defer to the lawyers in the Office of General Counsel, who I know are leading on this issue and working it aggressively.
So you are prepared to encourage or allow fatal attacks, lethal attacks against individuals with no real concern or review of the legal basis for it?
Mr. Ranking Member, that's certainly not my position. My position is very clearly that on matters like this and other matters that would come before the policy organization, if I am confirmed, and including my current capacity, I am extremely diligent and focused on ensuring that the Office of General Counsel is appropriately engaged in all of these matters to ensure that any options that are elevated are lawful in addition to other considerations.
So what has the Office of General Counsel told you is the statutory basis for these operations?
Senator, again, just with respect to the legal basis, I'm going to defer to them in order to provide an accurate and appropriate response.
You cannot provide a statutory legal basis for this action?
Senator, I simply don't want to speak for the Office of General Counsel on this very important matter.
You are in the policy department of the Department of Defense. And policy embraces not just moving troops on the map, but also what's legal, what's not legal, what we can do. Don't you think you have an obligation, if you believe there is a failure to follow the laws, to at least examine that and be prepared to respond to questions like this?
Mr. Ranking Member, I have no reason to believe that the President or the Secretary are directing us to do anything unlawful. With that said, in the context that you're describing or any other, part of policy's role is candidly, sir, as a we serve to ensure that the relevant stakeholders are part of the process and the way they need to be to bring their respective expertises to bear, whether we're talking about military matters in the Joint Staff and Combatant Commands, acquisition issues in A&S, in this case, legal issues in the Office of General Counsel, who is ultimately the office best positioned to provide the answers that you and I believe others seek.
Have you raised this
Mr.
question?
Ranking Member, maybe Mr. Velez-Green could reflect on your question and see on the record if he could respond or not.
Mr. Chairman, that's excellent advice.
Yeah. Senator Sullivan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just had one more question for Mr. Velez-Green. It's relating to Taiwan. You've written about Taiwan a lot. It's a really important area for our national security. It's been a island democracy for decades and also a critical element of the free world's economy. And the United States, our support, our military has pretty much kept it free for decades. That's a fact. You've written that unlike in Ukraine, this is your words, Taiwan's defense will require more than military aid from the United States. Taiwan's defense will require U.S. intervention. Can you talk about what constitutes a credible deterrent with regard to Taiwan? Because I think that's the key. And the importance of allies and partners, not just us, as it relates to Taiwan. And then finally, how we can speed the delivery of arms sales with regard to Taiwan. It's hard to demand that they spend more on their defense, which they should, and I know the administration has been doing that, and I'm fine with that, to encourage them to spend more. But if we can't then deliver the weapons that they need, that's a little bit of a quandary for them. So if you can kind of package those three different questions I just asked on Taiwan in an answer.
Thank you, Senator. Above all, I certainly want to be very, in an absolute sense, deferential to the President's intent and the Secretary's guidance.
Understand.
With respect to Taiwan and the first island chain, this is critical terrain when we think about operating from a position of military strength in the Indo-Pacific. Having forceful deterrence along that geography is vital to ensuring a balance of power that allows us to achieve our ends.
And we've said that here, correct? The Taiwan Relations Act, the Congress of the United States, in a very exceptional piece of legislation that still rules our relationship with Taiwan today, said that military force taking over Taiwan would be of grave concern to the United States. That's about as high a level of national security strategic interest from our country as you get, correct? That's still the case, isn't it?
Yes, Senator, that is to my knowledge.
Oh, it is. It's in the law. But
Yes.
Do you agree with that? The answer is yes.
Senator.
You agree with the law?
Oh, I certainly agree with the law, yes.
Yeah, good.
Yes. With respect just to the other elements of your question, in terms of how to maintain a robust deterrent in the first island chain, Taiwan included, we operate under sort of focus on the question of the denial of defense.
Yep.
What is required to convince Xi Jinping in particular that any attempt at aggression will not only be costly, but that it will ultimately fail, and therefore is not worth attempting in the first place. This is, to your point, Senator, in substantial part a question of what the joint force, what options we can provide to the President if and when required. It is also vitally a question about what our allies and partners are able to do in that critical geography. This is something that is a central focus. I have the opportunity to work very closely on matters related to these countries in this particular area over the course of my tenure and prior, and helping them, incentivizing them, and then enabling them to step up. I believe Admiral Paparo said that has a disproportionate effect on our ability to achieve denial just by virtue of terrain and positional advantage. In terms of, but then I think, Senator, to your very right observation, it is all good and well to incentivize folks to step up, but if we cannot get them the weapons they need to do so, that is a problem, and that is something that we are. That is why, as I believe you spoke to the Undersecretary about yesterday, the DIB is such a central and explicit part of what we are doing. We want to get to a place where there's no question about our ability not just to deliver, but to sustain the ability of those partners to do their part alongside U.S. forces to ensure a lasting deterrent in the Indo-Pacific, also in other regions, Europe and the Middle East especially. That is, I think, a critical element of peace through strength on an enduring basis.
Good. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Sullivan. This concludes today's hearing. I want to thank our witnesses for their participation and their testimony. For the information of members of the committee, questions for the record will be due to the committee within 2 business days of the conclusion of this hearing, and we are now adjourned.